So, Yu-Gi-Oh! People are talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! There's actually been quite a few, I guess, YouTubers who kind of they kind of border on investment advice or running a store advice or um, general collecting advice. And there's been a few things that have come up about Yu-Gi-Oh! Just to give you a backstory if you're not aware of anything about Yu-Gi-Oh! Just because not many people talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Until now. It's been, dying for quite a while. Not to the point where, it's going to disappear just because it's been around since the 90s. There's only been three collectible card games that have survived the 90s, and that was Magic the Gathering, the first one, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! So they managed to hold on all this time. And, there's something about, being established and sort of showing the test of time and going through the late 90s, early 2000s when, most collectible card games collapsed and failed. And Magic the Gathering and Pokemon were both, in. There was a realm of possibility that they could have also collapsed and failed if, different decisions weren't made or different things didn't happen. And then by around 2005 to 2010, they start to climb their way back up, right? And then after 2008, after 2012, that's when things kind of go crazy for Pokemon and Magic. But that's never really happened with Yu-Gi-Oh! They managed to survive the 90s. And I don't really know what happened with them in the early 2000s, but I guess they just chugged along and chugged along. And the lessons that they learned were different than what Magic and Pokemon learned, or they chose to go a different path in which they kept endlessly printing their sets, thinking that this stuff will just keep going on, right? And I don't know whether they increase or decrease print runs even. Maybe it's even possible they just always print the same amount, but they are overprinted because they end up staying on shelves. You can't move them, and then apparently the stores that do buy them and that have been buying them this whole time dump them for below wholesale costs. And this has apparently been happening for dozens of sets. Well, maybe a dozen sets or more. But I suspect it's been going on a lot longer than that, and it happens often. Maybe there's a period where sets do manage to make maybe close to MSRP, and then they just go back down to being a loss leader for the stores. So basically, any stores that have a Yu-Gi-Oh! Community order product, and maybe they order a little too much product, and then they have to dump that product, and they've, I guess, gotten used to it, and so they kind of have it on their books as, I don't know, they're just going to write it off at the end of the year anyway. Maybe I don't really know, but it's not a good thing to have to write off product, right? It's not helpful in any way. It just means they'll have to pay less taxes on Yu-Gi-Oh boxes, but they've still lost money, right? So a lot of stores have either just stopped carrying Yu-Gi-Oh or severely reduced their orders. Like, let's say if they order 100 boxes, they're now ordering 20 boxes, or if they used to order 2 cases, they now ordering 2 boxes, that kind of thing. And eventually, if we get to the point where they're just not those, as they order less and less, they'll just stop carrying it entirely, whether or not there's players, right? And this is the thing, is that there are still players of Yu-Gi-Oh out there, right? There are people that are really dedicated to playing Yu-Gi-Oh, more so than, say, Pokemon even. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many there are of them. And I don't know if there's really that much in comparison to, say, Magic, Flesh and Blood, or whatever. But it won't matter at all if nobody wants to carry the product. If they have to continually take a loss on the product, they'll just stop carrying it. And then there'll be less and less stores for you to go to play the game. And you'll have to play it at the kitchen table. But then Walmart's, Targets, and even Amazon, they're not going to carry it either, and they're just won't be any Yu-Gi-Oh because Konami will just discontinue the product. But in a Christmas miracle, they've decided to finally make some changes. As far as I can tell, they've never really changed how the cards look, how they're printed, or what the styles or anything like that. And now they have these sort of breakout styles, which now they're going to have full arts, just like Pokemon and Magic and other collectible card games, and really nice foiling, it looks like. And they're going to possibly have serialized cards. But to me, I just don't like the look of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. No matter how good the gameplay is, and I don't know how good it is, but I suspect it's better than Lorcana, right? So, and I would think that, I might play Yu-Gi-Oh if I could stomach the look of the cards, which I can't. And I look at the examples of the breakout cards that have been put out, and they're better, but the layout is also a problem. Is they're still using the framing and the layout, even though they're breaking out of the frame, they're still using the same style of the text box and the symbol up on the right and whatever the power levels and that kind of stuff, and they haven't changed that, and it looks way too 90s to me. And it's just because the style, when you mix that graphic design of the 90s with the type of art that Yu-Gi-Oh is using, it just doesn't do it for me. Like, I really just can't stand it. So I'm just not that into Yu-Gi-Oh. And that was one of the main reasons why I just stopped carrying Yu-Gi-Oh. Like, I ordered, I think, one box from one set, and there are still booster packs in slots at the store from 2023. I mean, some of them sold, but like half the box or whatever. And yeah, I'm a tiny store, but since then, there's nothing from the original Magic stuff that I bought, or any of the Pokemon stuff that I bought. There's no Pokemon in the store. There's none of the Lorcana. There's, I guess the Flesh and Blood has kind of stuck around, but even more of that has gotten bought than Yu-Gi-Oh. And yeah, we're a small town. Maybe there's not a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players. From time to time, people come in, especially around the holidays, because they're coming from somewhere else to visit their family, and they're interested in Yu-Gi-Oh. And have some singles and some tins and that kind of stuff. But I just don't order anything, and I haven't ordered any Yu-Gi-Oh product since that one booster box, mainly because I don't like Yu-Gi-Oh as the way that it looks, and I'm not particularly interested in the game, in trying the game or playing the game. I've got enough games going on, and it seems very swingy to me, and it's not necessarily my style, but I don't think that it's necessarily a bad game, right? Just, it's not for me. So I don't personally like Yu-Gi-Oh, but then also it doesn't sell, so then there's no reason for me to carry it at all. And if I'm like that, there's probably quite a few stores that are like that. Any new stores that have opened, maybe they just didn't carry Yu-Gi-Oh, and then the stores that did, they've been lowering their orders, right? And so there's been less and less revenue going to, well, distributors, and they're having to dump Yu-Gi-Oh product. So they probably have been talking to Konami, and Konami itself has been making less and less revenue off of it. So they realize they've got to make some sort of change. Now, is this change too little, too late? I don't know. It's hard to tell, and maybe it can save the game, or maybe it'll just slide into irrelevance over time, or maybe it'll just chug along like Force of Will has. I don't know, but it seems like a small chance that, based on what I've seen, the changes. I don't think it's enough, and I don't think you can change the culture around Yu-Gi-Oh at this point. I think it's pretty entrenched. And there's also some people out there that are saying that they're going to invest in Yu-Gi-Oh, and that seems wildly stupid to me. Now, I'm generally not, I don't like telling people what to do with their money, but if you want to be told what to do with your money, absolutely do not invest in Yu-Gi-Oh. It doesn't matter that it's dirt cheap or whatever. There's too much risk involved in where it could go in the future. Sure, you could make money off of it, but there's lots of other things that have less risk, and you could make the same upside. So just, if you're open to the idea of, listening to somebody, I'm just giving you the advice. Put your money anywhere else other than Yu-Gi-Oh. I just don't want to see people lose money on something that's so obvious that you're going to lose money on. It's not a rug pull because it's been around for 30 years, but you will be rug pulled. So anyway, I don't think anyone should invest in Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't know that it's going to save itself. But in any case, let me know what you think in the comments below, and have a good day.